Well, good morning. This is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred. Really glad you could join me today out here in the vegetable garden. Anyhow, it's an exciting time of the year. Our last frost date has passed here in Pennsylvania. And so now it's time to plant those heat lover plants. The tomatoes, the peppers, the melons. They all love warm feet. And so anyhow, today I wanted to share some tips and ideas with you on how you can plant mountain spring tomatoes in your vegetable garden. And so thanks for joining me today. So before we begin planting these mountain spring tomatoes, let's just talk about these tomatoes a little bit. First of all, they are a determinate variety, which means they only grow certain length, about 30 inches high, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less, depending on your soil conditions. The other option is your indeterminate. They're the long vining tomatoes. I've had my sun gold cherry tomatoes get to 14 feet long by the time they grow up and over a trellis. In fact, I have my cattle panel trellis that I just recently installed. I'm growing some of my sun gold cherry tomatoes up those, so I'm really excited to see how they're going to do. But anyhow, behind each label here, they always give you some nice information on the label front and back. And so here it says that this mountain spring tomato variety, it matures in 69 days and the fruit size is 9 ounces. And then mountain spring produces large, firm fruit that resists cracking. Matures in 69 days and it's best in organic, rich, well-drained soil and water freely in dry weather. And as you can see behind me, I'm using my black plastic mulch. I always grow my tomatoes and peppers in the mulch. It suppresses the weeds, holds in the moisture, and warms up the soil nice. And being these tomatoes are a heat-loving plant, the black plastic mulch for me is my tomatoes just flourish under the mulch, black plastic mulch, and also my peppers. And so these are a nice, easy variety to grow. And so let's start planting these. And when you're buying your transplants or market pack, it's always nice to pull one out and look at the root system. You want to make sure they're not root bound. And so if they're root bound, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for your plants to get started. And so these have a nice root system to them. And you also, when you plant, it's good to plant up to like your first leaf. You can always plant tomatoes a little deeper. Like I'm going to pluck off that leaf and then probably plant it up to this depth here where the first two branches are. And so, again, something very easy to plant. Again, you can plant these deeper. And so, take your little shovel, or if your soil's nice and loose, you can use your hand. And then just simply dig a nice deep hole and plant them up to your first leaf. And then just gently tamp the soil around them. And so, I'm going to plant 3 tomatoes here. I had already went ahead and tilled my soil some, used my fork and garden fork, and added some fertilizer ahead of time. And then I'm just going to water these as I go along. Tomatoes, again, are something that requires full sun, at least 6 to 8 hours of sun, and more sun the better. And being they're in this plastic, they love having their feet nice and warm. And so let's just plant one more here. and give them a nice watering in here. And to the left of me, I have my Amish paste tomatoes that I recently planted. They're great, a nice fleshy tomato. It's great for canning, making tomato sauce. And so I have here next to me a nice heavy-duty tomato cage. I pay about $4.50 for these a piece. In fact, my tomatoes, I ended up buying those at Ray's Nursery. They were $1.60 for a market pack. And you know, last year we ended up making 80 quarts of tomato sauce, and that was just the tip of the iceberg from our tomato harvest here. And so take these tomato cages, you know, you may use a stake, but I use the cages here, and then just now's the time to put these cages in when they're nice and small. And these hole cutouts in my plastic are 6 inches by 6 inches. And so just gently push them down in there. Like so. Now also, if you can see, I have an irrigation system here. I won't be turning that on until all my tomatoes are in. And so these heavy-duty cages are really going to support these tomatoes really nice. And so you just want to make sure they're in nice and firm in the ground. So there you go, something very easy to do. And you know, it's good to get, if you have a label, you can label your tomato plants, or you can use the label that they come with, you know, as long as they don't blow away in the wind. So anyhow, I just want to thank you for joining me today out here in the vegetable garden. Hope this gave you some tips or ideas on how to grow your own tomato plants. Again, something very easy to do and very inexpensive to do. And you know, the harvest of tomatoes is just amazing. You know, when they come and become ripened. And so anyhow, I just want to thank you for joining me today. So until next time, this is Plant Smart Living with Farmer Fred.